So we're going to talk today about esports and academics, which really, we're going to talk about with the collegiate scene of esports. And we have an all-star panel up here, and I'll let them all introduce themselves, and then I'll stop talking because they're way smarter than I am about esports in colleges. And so we're going to talk about the competitive side and the academic side, and then of course we're going to open up to Q&A because we want to make sure that if you have questions about what's going on in the college scene for esports, we can answer those questions. So that's really a big part of this, is that we make sure that if you have a particular thing you want to know or learn about, you ask that question, and we'll have the experts up here be able to answer it, or attempt to answer it at least. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you, good job. That's why he's here.
That's my job.
And so that's us. My name is Joey Gariziak. I'm the director of eSports at Shenandoah University. I've worked there for about 8 years now. Our program is 2 years old at this point, and we'll talk more about how we're affiliated with the National Association of Collegiate Esports, who we compete with, who we compete against, some of these people down here, and kind of what the current state is. But yeah, Shenandoah University, we have a varsity team. We also have an academic major, working on an MBA concentration right now, and just opened up our new arena. The grand opening hasn't happened yet. It's soft opening. The students are at least in it and can practice and compete in there. We just opened about 3 weeks ago.
Question. What does an arena look like for esports?
There's a picture in here. So our presentation's literally like 7 slides with pictures.
They're all
of
pictures.
all of our programs.
Yeah, it's just pictures.
As we talk, you'll be able to see some of the students and the arenas and stuff.
Yeah, so we'll show you what ours looks like. Coker, we have a picture of theirs as well. And I don't know if we got Harrisburg. I don't know if we got your gaming. We may have gotten it in there. Yeah. So we'll talk about that because arenas will vary from one place to another for sure. But I'll let you guys go down the list here.
Yeah. So can y'all hear me? Okay, perfect. I'm really loud, so I don't want to get too close. My name's Chris Groggins. Second up there on the slide, I am an instructor of esports, so I'm finishing my PhD in sport and entertainment management. So it says professor. Knock on wood. Hopefully in a few months, I'm a professor of esports. But I teach at Shenandoah University, and I'm helping develop their esports management and esports major, which has been an amazing experience so far. So I work side by side with Zach and Joey. Before coming to Shenandoah, like I said, I was studying at South Carolina. I study kind of the sociology and psychology of esports, so the social aspects of it, which is really fascinating, and how we can use something online to foster social interactions amongst individuals. And before that, while I was at South Carolina, I did a little consulting with Call of Duty, E-League, stuff like that, running events. So I really specialize in event management and the business administration of esports.
My name's Zach Harrington. I'm the assistant director and head coach for the Shenandoah eSports program. I actually just officially started there this August, but all of last year I was a volunteer coaching the Rocket League team. Before I did esports, I did pretty much every job you could think of, customer service, sales, the whole gamut, but I've been a gamer my entire life, in everything ranging from like Counter-Strike 1.6 to doing high-level WoW raids, just everything. So gaming's kind of been my passion my entire life. So when I got presented with the opportunity by Joey to come in and volunteer as a coach and kind of show what I could do, I hopped right on that train. So I just think it's cool that somebody with Chris has awesome qualifications. These guys are amazing. They're extremely smart, they know their fields really well. I think it's cool that somebody without those kind of qualifications at this point can step into esports and make a career out of it.
Hi, I'm Charles Palmer. I am the program lead of interactive media at Harrisburg University. Harrisburg University, we have 3 collegiate teams actually that are working in NACE, that are competing in NACE. We also just kicked off our undergraduate in esports production and management program, so I'm the program lead for that program as well, and I serve as the faculty advisor on the collegiate teams, which is sort of like, they just needed a faculty member.
Figurehead.
Yeah, pretty much a figurehead, and yeah, where it's interesting to play in this space, and we're just kicking off on the academic side of it.
And I'm Joseph Rudy. Usually just go by Rudy. As Joey can probably attest, there's way too many Joes in this world.
Absolutely.
But I am the head coach and director of esports at Coker University. We are basically 2 years, almost to the day. I think we started in January of 2018 now. Holy crap, that's tough to say now that that's 2 years ago.
2 years ago, it was 18.
Wow. Yeah, we're 2 years old. We're also part of NACE. We have 3 games that we have under our program right now of Hearthstone, League of Legends, and Overwatch. Before here, I just started off as being very involved in a lot of college clubs as they were growing up, and then it helped me find a job that I have now at Coker. But yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome.
All right, so we don't really have like a structure for this kind of panel. We're gonna just kind of talk for a while and see what happens and take it from there. But you know, I do want to make sure we hit on the competitive side and the academic side. So we'll give each of those two kind of designations some time for people up here to talk about them. But just kind of in general, some general information about collegiate esports. And of course, you all feel free to chime in anytime, and then you know we'll kind of tag team it. In collegiate esports on the competitive side, there are about 170 varsity programs under the National Association of Collegiate Esports, or NACE, which is kind of like the NCAA for esports, if you will. NCAA does not sponsor, support esports at this time, and they won't for the, I think they said, quote unquote, foreseeable future, which we don't really know what that means.
2020.
2022?
2022.
At some point, it's going to happen and be under the NCAA, which of course does bring about some different laws and rules and regulations, rules and regulations with it. But the NCAA is constantly changing. A big thing went through with the NCAA where now students can be paid for their name, image, and likeness beginning in a few years, not yet. And
Pay for their work, that's preposterous.
yeah, it's a crazy idea.
That's a whole nother panel.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conference. And so that will kind of pave the way, we think, for the NCAA to get involved. But at this point, NACE is involved, which is what we referred to a couple of times up here. Harrisburg, Coker, and Shenandoah, all part of NACE, along with, again, about 170 schools across the country and some in Canada. Most of those schools do offer scholarships for competing in esports. Some full ride, some partial. Some schools don't offer any. Coker offers some
Partial, yeah.
partial. Harrisburg, I know, offers up to full ride, and Shenandoah offers none. So we actually have all three kind of levels here. And so about 85 to 90% of schools, I think, offer some kind of scholarship, which is crazy for parents to hear a lot of times, that their kid can go to school on an esports scholarship to compete in video games, Overwatch, Rocket League, League of Legends, Smash Brothers, Hearthstone, you know, whatever it's going to be. In NACE, there are a lot of different games that are played. CSGO is played, and it is a first-person shooter, which to some schools is a little tricky, but it's wildly popular across universities. So a lot of schools do offer that, and there is a championship for it. So that's kind of where we are right now. And then on the academic side, there are, I think Harrisburg is going to be number 4, the 4th school in the country to offer an undergrad in esports for a major. There are other programs that have certificates, online certificates, or minors, and just individual classes. There are a lot of schools that just offer one class here, one class there about esports. And we started that way at Shenandoah about a year ago. It really came out of the sport management program. And so it really kind of comes out of different areas, depending on different schools, and the curriculum does look different. And we'll be able to talk about that a little bit throughout the course of this panel. What else about esports? Anything else, guys?
Well, I think we need
Snapshot?
to gauge. Does anyone have a vast knowledge of the collegiate esports scene currently, or is everyone here just okay? Cool. So we're gonna kind of be probably saying some things that you already know, but a lot of people come to us and don't really have any knowledge, or don't even know it's at the collegiate level yet. So stick with us, and then hopefully you'll learn something. But
Or correct us.
yes,
Or
or correct us. Perfect. I think moving forward, though, you mentioned NACE several times. Maybe let Zach and Rudy or whoever talk about the competitive side,
Yeah.
or maybe what they're seeing in esports at the collegiate level that is important. So what are students getting out of it? Where are we competing at Shenandoah, you know, other than NACE, and why are students getting involved?
Sure. So what I've seen, the big benefit to students is, I think Chris actually coined it. It looks more like looks more like a fraternity that includes all genders than it does like a competitive team, because all the kids, we have about 45 students who are on the teams, and I mean, they're talking about getting an esports house next year together. They're all super close, they spend all their time together, they eat together, they hang out in the arena together. It's just this big family environment for a bunch of people that otherwise probably wouldn't have found interaction within the university. I actually had one student who I coaxed into trying out for the Rocket League team last year. He was a low gold level player, if anybody's familiar with Rocket League. but we had open tryouts, we had 2 spots filled and like 6 or 7 people, and he was the only one that could aerial consistently and hit the ball. So I was like, all right, you're in, we're going to work, I'm going to teach you how to play the game, and now he's the team captain of the Rocket League team and a grand champ this year. And he told me last year, I got a text at like 2 or 3 a.m., gamer time, and he was like, hey, I just wanted to say thanks for making me try out for the Rocket League team. I was feeling kind of lost at this school, and if it wasn't for the program, I don't know where I would have been because I didn't really have a community there. So, that's the kind of interactions that make me love my job, and that's why I do this. As far as games, at Shenandoah, we compete in Overwatch, Rocket League, and League of Legends. We have been working on adding Super Smash Brothers, which we will have this semester now that we have our arena space complete. I coach Overwatch and Rocket League directly. We have a remote coach for League, and I will be coaching the Smash team as well. The other leagues we compete in, well, this year NACE has implemented some NACE-specific leagues, which is awesome. We also do TESPA for Overwatch and CSL for Rocket League and League of Legends.
Yeah, I see a lot of things that he does as well. It's almost like your team comes a second family for a lot of these players. Actually, 2 of my players started dating, and I'm hoping that doesn't cause any problems in the future.
We have that as well.
Yep.
Well, we'll get to that road if we ever had to get there. But yeah, they spend a lot of time together. They're almost in the arena probably a little too much than I would like, but the academics are doing well. They're actually studying in there sometimes, which surprised me. No one actually expected that when we built the arena, was that it would be used as like a secondary study space for these players. A lot of them have the same classes together so that they're able to work together and all that stuff. But yeah, second family between a lot of these players. We compete in a lot of things that they do as well with TESPA, CSL. We did Open Division last year for Overwatch as well. Our Hearthstone players go ahead and play in a lot of the minors that pop up online. So they just try to compete whenever they possibly can. And they have the time. They're up till, like you said, 2, 3 a.m. I got a message at 4 a.m. the other day. I don't know why they're up, but that's just gamer time, I guess.
Yeah.
One of these days, I'll get like an email or a message at like 9 a.m. and I'm going to be very shocked.
Yeah.
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong. If they message me at like before 10 a.m., something's wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
That means they've been up until that point.
oh yeah, good point. Yeah.
If I just add one thing, so all the same at HU, probably 2 differences that I'd like to elaborate on is our club team. Our club team is extremely engaged as well. The eSports Club is the largest on campus at a little over 100 students in the club itself. Instead of just being locked into playing the 3 games that the collegiate teams play, these students have the opportunity to play whatever they want. And so they've brought a level of camaraderie, involvement, engagement that a collegiate team couldn't do because of just the size of the numbers. Yeah. And prior to having an esports team, we had no sports teams. So for our STEM university, seeing students walking around in the merch, celebrating the teams and looking at the players as, revering the students when they're in class, it's like, I think he plays on the Overwatch team. Was really amazing. I teach a freshman level course, and we had a couple of the Overwatch players in my class, and it was really odd to see the jocks. Yeah. The jocks are now the esports players, right? And it was really interesting to see. On the flip side, not just to make sure that this is brought up, is the fact that these are student athletes, right? And so every semester we've seen students from our esports team actually get kicked off or go on to probation because of the athletic side of it. And I'm extremely proud. I was a little worried that they were going to be treated differently at the university. But no, there's a GPA standard. Those students don't meet it. They actually go and they're on the bench for a semester until they work back up. And we've seen it motivate some students to really get their act together. And we've seen some students say, you know what, I really just wanted to game. I didn't care about this college thing. And we've asked them, thanks, but no thanks. Right. And so that's really important to our program as well.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that's a good point. And can y'all maybe talk a little more about that? So y'all brought up a good point about they're kind of in the arena all the time. Are there guidelines, stipulations, when's the arena open, guidelines and stuff like that as far as competitive goes? How does it work? That's an even better question.
Sure. So in our case, our arena is under key card lock, So the three of us up here have access. There are a small number of student leaders that I've provided access to that are also our work studies. Our arena this past semester, once we got in, was officially open from 3 p.m. to midnight, Monday through Friday, and then it was like noon to 10 o'clock on the weekends. So officially they were only allowed to be in there while it was open and while somebody was there monitoring the lab, and also they can't get in without the access. So. But I know that I'm sure there were some times when I wasn't there after 12 o'clock when the work study was like, nah, I just want a game, and people stayed afterwards.
Yeah, I know there were a few times I was in there at 1 a.m. playing COD, and there were definitely students in there, but they were supervised, so it's okay. As far as guidelines, I'm softballing these in here to you, Zach.
Thank you.
Yeah, when they come to the interest meeting at the beginning of the semester, what's that look like?
Yeah, so we went over kind of what Charles was talking about. There's a minimum GPA requirement. There's also a code of conduct. We had our players signed basically an intent to compete. It outlined things like toxic behavior, all the things you would expect to be negatives from esports. And we just want to make sure that they're representing the university correctly because, like Charles said, they are student athletes. So they're representation of Shenandoah. And we also wanted to make sure that they were there to do what they came to college for, which was study and learn. So esports is supplementary, it's not the main thing, and at least on the competitive side, it's an awesome activity and it brings a lot of value to the students, but that's a secondary thing. They're there at college to learn.
Just out of curiosity, does that policy include like, what's the word, like bigotry specifically? Because like, when I've been online, especially when gaming with like queer or trans friends, like there is very much that propensity for toxicity once any of that gets mentioned in any of the voice chats. So I'm wondering if that's something that you are on the lookout for as esports coaches.
Absolutely.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact verbiage that we used, but it covered all that kind of thing. And actually, luckily at Shenandoah, we have a very diverse group of students, like very wide range of people from backgrounds, genders, sexualities. So the students are actually pretty good about regulating that. They really respect each other. We've had some people come into the Discord who didn't respect those rules, and it's self-regulated. The students were like, no, we don't accept that kind of language or that kind of behavior here. That's not cool. This is your one warning anymore, and you're gone.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, Discord has been really interesting to have access to the student Discord. And so a situation, I'm glad you mentioned self-regulated, a situation popped up in the president of the esports team. She immediately, young lady, phenomenal having young women in the sport. She immediately took action on it, didn't want to escalate it up, didn't realize that a couple faculty were at least observing it, and we were really proud with the way the students themselves handle it. And I will say though that the level of toxicity that you see online in open play is completely different than what you see in the collegiate space. And I think it is because of the variety of just the number of different types of people who are playing together and learning together, and in that age bracket, right? They're a little more tolerant, I think.
So you brought up diversity. I'm actually kind of curious. As you know, in the professional scene, there's basically like I think this many females that are in like in any professional esports ecosystem, right? Yep. What is the general breakdown for your teams?
Yeah, Rudy, you want to start?
Yeah, it definitely varies from team to team, but my team, we have about 12 people total, and 3 of them are females. So we do have quite a good spread there, at least when it comes to esports. That is very high in percentage. It's 2 for Hearthstone and 1 for Overwatch, and our Overwatch player is consistent top 500. So she is an amazing player. Taught me everything I know about Ana. So she's extremely good, and my 2 Hearthstone players, I believe that they're consistent around somewhere between like rank 5 to legend.
Yeah, ours is horrible, all white male. Right, and so it was interesting because we did open calls. We got 300 applicants to come into the program, and not a single woman did. And so we've had a number of conversations about how to change that. I also am on the leadership team for professional esports organization as well. We have, you were talking about 5, we have the top female, the only female R6 player in the country is on our team. And it's interesting to watch what happens when I bring her into the classroom and when she talks to other young ladies at the university about the fact that you can make a place in this field. And so I am constantly pushing our athletic director and our programs to start looking, but to their credit, that first open call, we got no women.
Yeah.
And so that made it kind of tough for us then to try and go out and say, well, or at least talk to the talk that we're doing. We're a very diverse campus, inner city campus, and we see a lot of great things, but it bugs me quite often.
We actually have a pretty decent mix. I'd say about 25% of our participants are non-male, most of which is Overwatch. We have 2 female League of Legends players, and then I think it's 9 or 10 non-male players that across our 2 Overwatch teams. So actually what I've found is that Overwatch is the game that attracts the most diverse group of people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And looking at other, we run, at Harrisburg University, we run an invitational each year, HuFest, and I think all the teams that have participated, I'm going to get the stat wrong, so I'm not even going to pretend to do it. There were a large number of women who showed up, and you're right, most of them were on the Overwatch as opposed to the League of Legends or Hearthstone teams.
Mm-hmm. One thing I noticed about, like, especially at the club level, it almost feels like collegiate clubs across the world are almost run by women.
Yes.
A lot of women are in, like, the behind the scenes sort of thing, the tour and organizing side. It was kind of crazy to go out and see of how many of these clubs are organized by women. It's almost like women are pulling the strings behind the scene while the men are playing, but I'm glad that that is changing, that there are a lot more women that are stepping up and playing. We might see the future where esports is all women.
So NACE ran their conference at Harrisburg University last summer, and there was a panel on diversity, and the women on the panel said exactly that, is that the management of these organizations, that's where the women are showing up, right? And so when you think of that now as the women being the decision makers,
Oh, yeah.
really changes your outlook of it. But we still need them in front of the camera and on the teams themselves. But,
Well, and I was going to say, I think, I pay a lot of attention to League of Legends and Overwatch. At least in the Overwatch world, and a lot in the League of Legends world too. A lot of the females that are in the space are in the background, right? They're the team managers, the house managers, the social media managers. All of those positions. A lot of them are women that are running those positions, right? But it is hard to see that.
Right.
When I think the Vancouver Titans owner is a woman, right? And,
Okay.
But you see just across the board, there's one woman that's in the Overwatch league as a whole, right? So.
Yeah. It's funny, I was just kind of sitting over here listening to everybody, and about 5-6 years ago, when I started coming to MAGFest and talking about esports, people were like, what in the world is esports? And now we're really diving into all these issues. And I didn't even say, hey, do we know what esports is? I kind of just skated right past that, because at this point, it's like, we know what this is. And you can hear about the growth, and it's cool to talk about all these issues, because it means to me that esports has arrived. It means that it's here to stay, especially at the collegiate level. We see it at the high school level now in a lot of states. And so the continued growth is really cool, and it's cool to be on a panel where you don't have to explain that anymore, because now you know what it is, and you can really dive into the bigger issues like diversity, so you can understand and how to get it better. Because esports is still the Wild West. At the collegiate level, professional level, high school level, it's very, very young compared to the NFL, Major League Baseball, those kind of things, and traditional sports. And so it's really cool that we've reached the point that we can start talking about these issues, not just that, hey, this is what esports is, and maybe it's going to be in some colleges soon, because it's in colleges now. It's over 300 or 400 different schools have some kind of esports team. I mentioned about 170 in NACE for a varsity level, and we've got, it's crazy to think you have coaches, you have scholarships, you're going to school to do this, you're training from a younger age to go do this in school, while also getting an education. And so it just kind of took me aback. I was like, ooh, this is way different than 5 years ago. That's how far esports has come. And obviously esports is much older than 5 years, but really it took off about 2013, 2014, really started getting that momentum. We started seeing it pop up in a few schools, but now it's almost a common thing now. It's like the new normal, which is really, really cool to see. Do we still have fights? I don't want to say fights. We have discussions with people at the university level about esports' role at the university level. Charles is really humble. I could brag on Harrisburg a lot because of how good their teams are. You see that Harrisburg wins. You see that a lot. Harrisburg wins a lot when they're competing in esports. He's too humble to brag about Harrisburg. And Overwatch champions last year, right?
Yes, ESPN decided that we were the champions. So.
This small startup company called ESPN decided they were the champions.
The only thing we really brag about is it was our first year out.
Yeah, which is awesome. It's really, really cool. And so, Rudy, can you talk about we talked about arenas. What does an arena look like? Will you talk about your space a little bit? Is this a current picture that we have up here of your space? Or?
Yeah, that's still pretty current. We are in the process of expanding it. Right now we only do have like 8 computers in the space, but we are looking to double that for next year and as well as build off on it. So we have a fairly small space in our library where our players have 24/7 access to. Now that's something that I could easily take away from them at any point because they have a key card to get in, and if their grades or their social media presence, even sometimes I had that problem in my first semester. I just take away their gaming space. If it gets even worse, then they're off the team, stuff like that. But yeah, we have 8 computers, high-end stuff that we got from Omen HP. And yeah, we're actually looking to build off of it. We're going to be creating a whole nother, we're slowly taking over the library like an infection almost, it seems. I'm sure that's what they think of us. But no, we started off small. We took over just basically a regular conference room that was in there that was not really being used too often. And we took over some study rooms for extra spaces for when we do VOD reviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure the other students are liking that, but yeah, we start off small. It's getting bigger. It's something that we wanted to do a slow build off, then just make it too big that we wouldn't even use.
Yeah. And that's a pretty typical story of what we had at Shenandoah as well. We started off small. We started off in the top floor of our library. We were there for about, 3 or 4 weeks, and they quickly realized that this isn't going to work. Yeah, this ain't going to work right here, having it in a library space. So we moved in with our virtual reality department, actually, into a new space. And so we were able to share very high-end computers with our VR department. And so it really helped with our resources because we're not a huge school that has a ton of money pouring into this program. So we were being creative about how to get the program going. So we moved in with our VR team, and we realized pretty quickly that, wow, esports is still growing. This is cool, but we need our own space. And so we were able to get that, and like I said, just opened it a few weeks ago. And same thing, we started off small, we're starting to grow. We have our new shipment of 8 more computers coming in on Monday. It's only been delayed about 2 months, and so we're growing as well. And so the spaces will differ from one place to another. And if you hit that button, see how I did that? The one on the right, I know it's kind of hard to see. That's our new arena right there. Where we do have a stage, and it's made for spectators to come in and have a good viewing experience. It is relatively small. Esports doesn't a lot of times get a huge audience unless you're talking about the international or some other major tournaments around the world. So it holds up to 75 people. But the big thing is we have a broadcast production room in there. And so that is a big, big part of esports, and it's the reason we have it as part of our curriculum. We want our students in there doing. We don't just want them in a classroom learning. It's great, and I'm a professor. I love teaching. I love being in the classroom and lecturing and having discussions, but it's so much more valuable to get them actually doing. And so that was one of the big things with our arena, is that we need to design this as almost like a living esports lab, where students can go in there 1 day a week, 2 days a week, whatever it might be, and then on the weekends and after classes, and learn how this works. How does this animal work that is this arena? How does the lighting work, the sound work? How do the streams work, the feeds work? We're working on our broadcast analyst desk right now so students can get the experience of being an analyst. And running events in here. We just had a Call of Duty event that Chris got second place, not first, first loser. And so they're running events, and these are completely student run. And for our curriculum, it came out of sport management, but because there is some overlap with the sport management concepts into esports, but there is so much that's unique about esports that it was easy to make the justification that this needs to be its own academic major. Not a minor, not just a certificate. We want to go full board. Let's make it a major. And we have right now 16 or 17 students that are current majors in our first year. We're going to bring in classes of between 12 and 15 every year is kind of what we're thinking. So at any given 4 years, we're talking about 60 students or so. And so we think that we can keep it at that, but we're seeing a lot of interest in the program, as I'm sure Charles will be able to talk about as well. There is a lot of interest from people, not just in your area that you usually get your students at your university, but from all over the country and all over the world, because it's such a unique thing. Becker College, Caldwell University, Shenandoah, now Harrisburg, are really the only schools that have this major. Ohio State keeps touting it and touting it and touting it, and yes, it's going to come to Ohio State, but it's not there yet. They're doing some great things and really developing it, but it's not quite there yet. There's a couple of schools. Staffordshire University in England has an esports program as well. They were one of the first and really uses a model for developing curriculum curriculum. But something that we've heard over and over and over when looking at what are we going to teach students? What is this? Every day you walk into a classroom, you can't just say, hey, how'd Ninja do? What are his streaming stats right now? That's part of it. But what are you actually teaching students? And a lot of people think that you're teaching them how to play video games. Well, that's not what you're doing. That's not what this eSports major is. They're not learning how to play. That's what the competitive team is for. If you want to play games, great. Go try out for a team. We'll get you a coach. We'll get you better at playing. We'll play against other schools. Hopefully not play against Harrisburg. It's not fun. But in the actual academic side, what are you teaching them? And so we talked to people at Riot, people at Blizzard, and they said over and over, experiential learning. Have them actually doing things. Don't just go into a classroom. Have them doing it. So, Chris, why don't you talk a little bit about what your classroom is like? Because he taught the intro class and the 200 level class this semester for the first time ever. And then I want to hear from Charles as well about how he's developed his curriculum, because it is different than SU, because every school is going to be a little different in what they're teaching.
Yeah. So I taught Intro to Esports and Contemporary Issues in Esports this semester, which is a great class. There's a lot, even though, esports has only been commercialized the last decade or so, there's a lot going on. Intro is very lecture-based. So we just talked about experiential learning, but we found in the 200 level class, some people placed in that hadn't taken the Intro to Esports yet. They took Intro to Sport Management, I believe, with a little bit of esports in the past, and they struggled because while it's simple, or we think it's simple, the concepts at the basic level, you still have to know about those concepts, to learn. Yeah. Such as just governance, policy, global status, the difference between, esports in South Korea and China versus Europe versus the United States. And so it's a 10,000-foot overview at the intro level, right? Because you want to know what a centralized or decentralized publisher model is. What's the difference between a developer and a publisher? Are publishers also developers? Well, it depends, And a lot of times those things aren't covered. So when you're using that language, and students haven't taken that intro course, they're just kind of blankly staring at you.
Students do that anyway.
Yeah. And then contemporary issues is a 200 level, so we were able to get into some higher level thinking, use some sociology, econ theory, stuff like that, greater fool theory, so, just apply all that, which we'll go into more next semester in consumerism. But we have an advisory board for our academic program, and it consists of CEOs, directors of esports across the country. And so we met with one of those people and said, what would you want to see as a final project? And it's funny we talked about diversity because they said, we need to figure out how to get women involved. And we had learned about that in class, but it was a week-long lecture. Yeah, and so just talking with them, we developed a project. You have a budget of $20 million, which sounds like a lot, but this is a global, industry. And so with $20 million, how can we incorporate more women into esports? So you need to consider, do we keep separated leagues? Is that beneficial? Does that just further augment the problem, make it larger? And then how are you going to use the money? Is this implemented in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And so they went and laid out the project, and then so next semester they'll be hopefully presenting that to a group of execs for a professional esports organization. So they take it seriously when you tell them that, because they realize they have to get in front of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And when you drop the name, Chris isn't dropping the name, Washington Justice, when you're presenting to them, that's pretty big. And it's a real world problem, which when you tell students that, they're like, oh, that's an actual problem, not just a theoretical one I'm learning about in a classroom. So that experiential learning is really, really important. Charles, why don't you talk about the development of your program and how you got to where you are?
I take absolutely no credit for it. The folks at Shenandoah have been amazing partners in us developing this program. Pretty much Joey said, here's my curriculum that was approved, make it your own. But we are coming at this area from two different directions. This is what he was saying, is each school is going to come at it a little different. Harrisburg University does not have a sports management program. So we could not come at it from that angle. We could come at it from the technical, the production, and the analytical side, which are programs that we are strong at the university. So making adaptations from what they had It's interesting hearing Chris talk about the Contemporary Studies course, because we'll be offering that next fall, this coming fall, and we'll have to definitely chat about that a little bit. But our first course is going to be offered this coming semester. And so we announced second week of December that this program was out there. I had a few students that were in the esports club that knew that we were coming, so I talked to them and sort of gave them a heads up. The class is full. In 2 weeks from offering it, or from announcing it to actually being offered, it'll run on Monday, or next Friday, this time next Friday. So that's going to be very interesting. We did the same thing. We went out to advisors and we said, what do you need? We're going to offer this program. What do you need? Our advisors are the same CEOs of organizations, but also of venues and And then we spoke with some people at Twitch as well on the production and the sort of broadcasting side, and then the social side of it as well. So those advisors, almost to a fault, said the exact same thing. They are finding employees, but they aren't finding employees with esports experience. They're finding employees with skills in other areas, and they're training them into using esports. And what they said was, that's all well and good, but that still limits the amount of time, or it increases the amount of time that they need of training. They would much rather have an employee come in and be ready on day one. So that's what all of our programs are really trying to do. Is sort of, there is a need in the industry when we look at how leagues are changing. If we think about Overwatch, leaving Burbank and now going to facilities all across the planet, right? And so now at every one of those facilities, they now need broadcasters, they need production specialists, they need observers, they need every role to fulfill that wasn't fulfilled in the past. So that's one of the things we're offering. And then the last thing I'll say is, I'm actually placeholding this spot. I speak a lot about diversity in our program, and so I was able to recruit, although since Joey turned us down, I will say that out loud. We went out and we found a woman from, actually I can't say the school, that's going to be joining us soon, and so I'm holding this position until she's left hers and comes and feels comfortable in our, and so I think that's going to be another thing of really pushing out the area. Question? Yeah.
I wanted to ask, has there been any trouble in generalizing your courses to apply to multiple different games and the industries and the productions behind those different games? Or have you found that generally speaking, that you've been able to provide the same sort of, I guess, a course and not have to be specific about
So the way I would address that is, we don't teach games, right? So just like you might have an NBA team, the front office knows nothing about playing the game itself. The only difference for us, or I'm sorry, of all of us, is the only courses that would really be specific in that space would be coaching courses, right? Everything else is about training an employee to be an employee, or to have a career in this particular space to do that.
And I think that's a brilliant way to say that, first of all. And we actually use the nuances of each game, I think, as examples throughout the classes. So, for example, in Contemporary Issues, we talked about what happened at ESL, I think New York this year with CSGO, is there's something called crowd ghosting happening, right? Where the crowd is literally yelling, he's at B, chanting it. And so how do you solve those issues when a whole crowd is chanting he's at B? You can't kick everyone out, but that doesn't happen in like a League of Legends typically. So using those different games and specific examples I think helps the curriculum. But I find, and I'm sure you guys will agree to this somewhat, that students come in and just like traditional sports, they have their game and they have their teams and they are the experts. And they know everything there is to know about esports in their mind. And so you have to kind of start super specific with some of those students and then walk them backwards. Because, hey, listen, you know about the Washington Justice, but do you know if the Overwatch League is a centralized model? Who's running that? And then they start realizing, okay, maybe I need to open up. Because some of them come in.
A little bit more, but yeah, I know everything else.
Yeah. And so it can be challenging in that aspect because people are passionate about esports. That's what I find. I've taught sport management and I've taught esports management, and esports management is by far has a lot more passion in it. not, I don't want to say better, more engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one more thing about kind of the generalizable for one game to another, in my event management class this semester, learning how to run a Battle Royale event is very different than learning how to run, a MOBA event, or a Rocket League event. So every game will be different in a lot of ways, but conceptually there are still some of those big 30,000-foot views that are the same. How to market, how to get teams registered, how to come up with some eligibility rules. But then when you talk about the format, are you doing double duel? Are you going to do this round robin? Single elimination, double elimination? How you determine a champion? That's very different, like I said, especially for Battle Royale, which right now is a nightmare to try to get a good event running for a Battle Royale, especially Fortnite. And so it is tough from one game to the next. But a game like Smash Brothers, very, very relatively easy to run an event compared to like a League of Legends event. It's just so much simpler. And so it does change from game to game, but there are those concepts that you can teach that will kind of go across games.
Yeah, I'd just like to add too, it's very dangerous in esports to completely focus on just one game.
Yeah.
Just look at Heroes of the Storm, for example. I say this every year, and now it's almost completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
If you just focus on one game, you don't know what's going to happen. That game could just fall out of being popularity. It could just completely crash and be gone. And you actually see a lot of these people who have been in the industry for a while, they are able to jump from game to game. Just look at like Monte Cristo and Doa. They were able to go from League of Legends to Overwatch seemingly flawlessly. And that's one thing that you need to be able to teach these kids coming in, is that what if they have to switch from game to game? What if they have to host a League of Legends event one day and then the next week Rainbow Six Siege or Smash?
Yeah.
Even hosting, you completely do it differently. So it's going to be good to have a vast amount of experience from different genres, because I do have a few friends who are in the hosting side of things, and they will go from a Rainbow Six Siege event to a Smash event to an Apex Legends event. And there's really no correlation to the games that they host sometimes. And it even comes down to casting as well, broadcasting, even in-game observing. You got to be able to jump in from game to game. Now, yeah, you will have your specializations. You will be able to say that I specialize in Overwatch, but I can transfer that over to CSGO and stuff like that. Like, as long as you have that flexibility, you'll go miles in this industry.
Question?
I'm going to cheat a little because I have to get ready for tour, but I did want to ask two things.
Yeah.
One's, you guys obviously mentioned sports and the NFL and all. How are you guys handling at the collegiate level? Because I've been out of esports for a bit because I work overnight now, but I have a long history in it. So you know how the NFL has a draft. How are the leagues handling going from college to these pro leagues? Is it just a free-for-all, whoever signs who? Is there a draft? Are there plans for that? Because I think getting that solidified is really going to solidify esports. It gives it that structure that people look forward to. Because as you know, the NFL draft is as big as the Super Bowl. Everyone tunes in. I take all the work for it.
Yeah. I think basically right now, it is basically just a giant free agency. You pick up wherever you can.
Yeah.
Riot has tried with their scouting grounds, but I don't think anybody got signed. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, teams will pick you up, you play for a weekend, and they will then have a signing period of like a week or two where only they could sign you. But players usually just wait those 2 weeks and just hear all offers before they actually decide on a team.
Yeah.
So drafts aren't a thing yet. And I think another reason for that too is that the collegiate scene, when it comes to the professional scene, is kind of weird. You actually see a lot more players go from professional to collegiate than to collegiate to professional. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like your life as an esports pro is very young and very short compared to a regular sports pro. And most players, if they go to the collegiate scene first, they have to focus on studies. They can't focus the 12 hours that they would need to if they were pro, so people are surpassing them. So that's why you see a lot of these pros come in at 18, play until their professional scene's done, and then go back to college.
But when you think of playing till they're done, you're now talking about 22, 24.
Yeah, 24. 25 if you're a veteran.
Yeah.
Like,
The old vets are 25.
yeah.
So we just signed, our team, we just signed 2 pro players that had decided to go back to college.
Of course.
Sorry.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Yeah, one more before, definitely.
Before I go, again, like I said, I have a long history. I've played from the OG StarCraft. I was a semi-pro for 1.6. Do you guys teach them the history? Because a lot of people that I've gotten younger friends into esports, I've showed them some of the stuff I grew up watching, mouse sports, Sunman shot heard around the world, Get Right, some of the best players in my day. And it's kind of gotten them more into it. Do you guys go through that all when teaching them or coaching them?
Yeah, so I would say I'm not an expert at esports. What I always tell people is I know things about gaming, and one of those is the history. So that was one of the first things I actually studied up on when I started teaching esports 3 or 4 years ago was the history, because no one knows how we got here. And everyone always says, well, it's been around since 2011. No, that's when Twitch became a thing, and before that was Justin.tv, and before that it was MLG.tv, and before that there's always something before that, right? So we actually start in the late 40s, actually before that, the early 1900s with penny arcades, and then we work up to pinball, and then we work up to actual arcades, and then go through the home console market and having computers come into the home, how that changed things in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So yeah, we talk a lot about that. Students don't really want to hear that stuff. They don't care about it. But the first 2 or 3 weeks of the intro class is actually the history of gaming and esports. So it used to be like half the semester, but like I said, students don't really care about the cathode ray tube. But they need to know about it, because that's how we got to where we're at. But yeah, that's a great question. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
No, we haven't taught it like you have.
Oh, okay.
But it is important. So it's not a standalone class that we teach it, but as Chris said, it's part of the intro class. And at the beginning, right? The very start of the class. So it is important to go through that stuff just so they see where we've come from. Just like in sport management, I talk about the history of Major League Baseball and the NFL. You talk about how it got started and how you got to where you are. The same thing has to be done with the esports industry. Talk about where it's come from and then how you got to where you are today, because that helps you project and forecast for the future too. So you try to get it to be important to the students, but they hear history and they just kind of tune out.
Yeah, you know? What's important, and then I got the question in the back, and the tournament I know is starting soon. But students, like you said, they don't care 1998.
They weren't alive in
StarCraft,
98.
yeah. A lot of the students are early 2000s.
computers back then.
And so a lot of times, yeah, you get the questions like, was there even internet then? And, but it's difficult to assess, because it doesn't matter that Twitch came out in 2011. It's how did it affect the industry. So if you're going to teach a class, emphasizing those things, the impact that these events have had, rather than what was formed in 2001 in Korea. It's like, okay, so KESPA's a thing, but why is KESPA important? And so not really, it was hard at first because I wanted to test, those small details because I'm passionate about them, but it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It's how did they affect the industry? So that's the one thing I would say about the history.
Because that's an important approach, because then it means that you have some experience when you think about, well, how is the next thing going to affect the sport?
Right. Yep.
Because I can look and think back to, oh, well, when this happened, this is how the sport changed, and now we have this new thing happening, such as a new platform that might be come out. So that's a good reason for teaching those things.
Yeah.
We had a question in the back.
I'm just curious, is there an eSports Hall of Fame yet?
I tried. I actually, I went out and bought some URLs just in case. But there are some organizations that are looking at doing something. But I was like, you get on this.
I think there might be one in Korea, in all honesty. I think Korea might have an esports Hall of Fame starting up. Not exactly sure on that, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing in the United States yet.
Yeah, we just got back from a trip to Seoul. We were working the International Esports Federation Championships with 10 of our students, which was awesome. And there's a League of Legends park basically over there, and they have some of the retired players, and there's a museum with some of the stuff. And so it's not really a Hall of Fame, but they have like retired jerseys and things like that over there. Pretty much, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And all my students are like, ooh, Faker's right here. Let's get a picture with the picture of Faker. I'm like, come on, really, guys?
Pictures.
Picture of a picture. Yeah. So I don't know if there's no Hall of Fame yet. It's gonna come, absolutely. And Charles, come on, I wish I'd done that too. That's really smart about the URLs.
I'm sure there's still some URLs available.
Yeah, I can still find some, but
I think we got 4 of them. But we were looking at all collegiate, so.
Of course, and most of the Hall of Fame will come from Harrisburg. And it's cool because saying that's going to happen, that still sounds crazy to me. A Hall of Fame for esports. We're really getting to the next level here, which is really cool. But yeah, it's going to happen. And esports, I think, will be the sport of the future. I mean, look what kids are playing right now. Some stats show that 99% of all boys and 94% of all girls in America play a video game before age 12. There is no other activity where that happens except for like breathing and eating. They're not playing football, baseball, basketball, golf. None of those at Drone Racing League, which is cool, but no other activity has the numbers for video games or that like video games has.
Next generation.
And so it's the next generation. Look at forecasting, look what kids are doing.
Have you considered that might be like a issue, and I don't mean like classes in like academic, I mean like
Right.
financially.
Sure.
Because like being good at the sport requires like practice time, it requires space, it requires like a good coach, it requires equipment.
Yeah.
Like technically those are all things that esports require, but also you can, with a lot of help, learn on like your mom's potato computer. Like just steadily upgrade.
Or, you know what else is on this?
Yeah.
The mobile gaming industry is growing exponentially.
Yeah.
And so at some point, esports will come to this in a much bigger way, and to VR, to be honest.
I mean, League of Legends Wild Rift, I can absolutely see that being an interesting event.
Yeah.
Yeah, Arena Valor had their own league for a while as well, and that's actually, yeah, they do.
PUBG Mobile is about, they're making some huge, they've just made some, we have a PUBG team, professional team, and they just made huge changes to the arena space. Orgs are dropping their teams because there's really a lot more interest in PUBG Mobile.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So much more money for the company than,
Stop doing PUBG on the computer completely, basically.
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, OGN, and so there's some interesting things coming in that space as well.
Yeah, and to go back to the class thing real quick, is one thing I did notice is that that does vary from game to game, because when you have games such as like Overwatch, you do need a pretty good computer to play that. You can't just play that on any computer. League of Legends, little less graphically intensive, but you still need a PC in order to play it. Games such as like the fighting game scene has one of the most diverse cast of players in it, and I think that's because you could go anywhere from like your friend's console to an arcade that you could go to, which sadly those are dying out now too, but that is one where that is a lot more inclusive when it comes to, oh, you don't have a lot, it doesn't matter. Can you go to a friend's place and play? Then you could compete.
We have a question here and then in the back.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask about, so you guys kind of sort of mentioned this, but not quite. And maybe it's for reasons. What is your involvement if your school even has a sports program, like a sports like a national sports program with like a traditional sports, football, whatever. What's your what has their involvement been with esports? Has there been any involvement?
You want to go first, Rudy?
Yeah, sure. So.
And then also like other schools, even bigger schools like Ohio State, they have a humongous football team, right? Their program is humongous. What have you seen about their involvement in esports?
Yeah, so I'll kind of tackle that backwards. One thing I know about Ohio State is that they're actually housing it under student life instead of athletics. So they're really focusing more on keeping the kids around, bringing some more students in. I don't know if they're going to do recruiting or anything like that. They're just mostly focused on the student base that's already on campus. Now, at Coker University, our esports is housed under athletics. So before I moved over to the library and I was still over in our athletics center, I was surrounded by both soccer coaches. I had a few, I think lacrosse coaches in front of me as well. So I was in the middle of the rest of the athletic scene at Coker, and we still are. We're still housed under athletics. And if you go to our sports page at cobras.com, you'll see that if you could go down the list, you'll see us right next to golf. So at Coker, they're all student athletes. We're basically tied to athletics as much as you possibly can be. But that does vary from school to school. Some people have it student life, some people have athletics. Some people just house their own esports program. Like they don't even house it into anywhere else. So that's something that does vary from school to school.
If I can add, I know the Ohio State models in some instances where they fought against it. Right. So the student life makes sense because the athletics folks, there's no sweat involved. There's no dirt involved. We don't want that.
You'll probably see that a lot of the D1
No concussions.
schools.
No concussions,
But are you seeing that changing over the years as more and more people are
They're going to have to.
Yeah, it's going to change. Yeah, absolutely. And Shenandoah is, we thought when we were starting we would be in athletics, and I met with the athletic director, and we quickly realized that, let's not put it under athletics after all, because she had no idea what esports was, and so it made more sense for me to be in charge of it instead of going through her for some decision making. So we started in student life and student engagement. And actually this year we moved under academics, which a couple of schools do. But it made sense for us because we do have an eSports major, an eSports academic program. So I'm able to be the director of kind of eSports, which means I oversee the competitive and the academic side. And all the money goes through me, decisions go through me. Actually, it goes through them, and I just say yes to whatever they say, or ask for. And so it does change. But I think in NACE, I think it's about 50 to 60% are in athletics. The next
rest are
30 to
student
40%
life.
are
Yeah.
in student life, and then very few are in academics. I think Boise State's in academics as well, if I'm not
Yeah, because
mistaken.
with their broadcasting program and
Yeah.
stuff like that, I believe they're also
Yeah.
academics.
Yeah, so there are a few schools that have it under academics, but more schools than not have it under athletics. But I think it will, especially when the NCAA comes in, when it does, because it's going to, the schools will move it under athletics because they're going to have to for the most part. And so it just makes sense. Whatever makes sense for your school, I say do. Because some schools it makes sense in athletics, some schools it doesn't. So do what makes sense for your institution because we see it kind of across the board.
I actually wish they wouldn't put it under athletics.
Yeah.
In the long
Yeah.
run, it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to see them side by side to actually outpace the athletics. There's a question in the back.
First off, thank you guys for doing this.
Yeah.
Kind of answered one of my questions about how smaller schools are going to compete with some of these larger schools. Eventually, they will all get in. But specifically, I want to know about equipment, right? So how is Shenandoah going to compete with Ohio State? And, maybe it is a thing of money, computers always upgrading, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What's your plan, what's your thought on how?
Equipment, Zach?
Yeah, I can take that.
Not my area.
So we've been very fortunate because Joey is really awesome at his job. As far as our equipment, we have 12 PCs right now in the arena, and we're getting 8 more through our partner who is CLX. We met them through a contact Joey has and kind of worked out a deal with them where they're our exclusive PC provider. So we got great prices on the equipment. So we formed a partnership, and we plan on working with them long-term to try to save some money. Where we've really gotten lucky, and I say lucky meaning Joey is awesome at his job, is we have partnerships, sponsorships with Logitech, DX Racer, and Astro. So we've gotten pretty much all of our peripherals and gaming chairs donated to us for free. So for smaller schools, the big thing is looking for partnerships, and now is the time.
Yes.
Because a lot of people are looking to get into esports, so people are willing to work with anybody. Show them that you've got something, show them that you've got value and that you're looking for a long-term partnership, and you can find ways to get people, even sponsors, donors, maybe not directly from the company, but maybe a non-endemic organization that maybe wants to donate some money to sponsor your equipment. So it's just kind of diving into that world right now.
Show them the eyeballs that their products will be seen by.
Right.
And you can really make a case for it.
Yeah, I don't think equipment's really going to be the issue. It's mostly the players. There's a very small group of players that are the top side, and they're all at Harrisburg. So it's very tough to compete with them sometimes. When it comes down to how many scholarship dollars you give them, like I have partial, Shenandoah doesn't have any, Harrisburg has full. So it's one of those things where we can't compete of getting the best players because they're going to go where they don't have to pay as much. Which that is, you're going to see that in the esports scene as D1 schools get involved as well. It's going to come down to just who could get the better offer to the schools. Now, we'll see how that changes in the future, but right now, on my part, if we don't get to compete as well, but someone gets a full ride to school, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'd rather these kids have an easier transition through college. But yeah, I think that's going to be the main thing is the player base.
And that's a great point because, like at Shenandoah, we don't have scholarships. So our students are very talented. Don't get me wrong. Our Rocket League team at its peak this season was 3rd in the country. Like they're great, but we sell it more as a social experience that helps them through their university experience, I guess. So we don't get. I mean, we keep saying Harrisburg, but I mean, they have the top talent. And so we understand that we can't really compete with that. So we sell it as a different experience. So we're not a club. We're varsity. The university supports us. Zach's a coach. So we still offer varsity level competition against these really good schools, but they understand that there's a lot of things that are priority above esports.
Yeah, I think so. And at some point, even with NACE, I think you're going to see almost like divisions, like you see with the NCAA, where there are schools that offer scholarships in one division, schools that don't offer scholarships in another division. I think you're going to have to. NACE is still pretty young. So last year, I think there were 60 schools in NACE. This year, like 170.
Yeah.
And so it's obviously growing. And so with 60 schools, you don't want to start dividing them up into different levels because there's not enough in each level. But now with more and more schools getting in, I think eventually you're going to see those levels. And I would love to be in a division with not competing against any scholarship schools because we're in the region with Harrisburg, which is tough to compete with in Overwatch for students that get no scholarships.
I'll just add that you guys keep talking about this program. We still have gotten beat on our home court by Maryville 2 years in a row.
Yeah, well,
Another
Maryville's
school that
really
offers
good.
full rides.
Yeah, offers full rides. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing is not equipment, but scholarship money.
Yeah.
At the collegiate level.
Yeah, it is 11 o'clock, so we will stick around. I mean, I can't speak for everybody up here, but I'll certainly stick around for answering other questions more individually. We can talk outside. I don't know if there's another panel in here after this.
Yeah.
Some of you have to go play. I know Rudy's got to go play in an Overwatch
Yeah, I'm going to be
tournament.
playing an Overwatch, so if any of you guys in the land, be sure to cheer us on. I'll make sure to leave my business cards with these guys, so if you guys want to email me at any time, I'm always up for that. I want to see the scene grow as much as it can.
Yeah.
I was in it since 2012 where everything was online. Everything was basically like if you got paid $20 for your day's worth, that was beautiful.
Yeah. I was competing when the grand prize was a case of balls, energy drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
But thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. And
you.
like I said, we're happy to stick around and answer more questions.
Awesome. Thank y'all. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.